Welcome back to DevelopLex. This is a special week where we're sitting at the Government Center on Main Street with Vice Mayor Wu and Councilwoman Sheehan. Today we're going to be talking about the future of Lexington. We've talked a lot to folks that have built Lexington through community development, economic development, real estate development, and how Lexington has gotten where it's at. But everybody always is looking into the future. And there's a really cool program that has a chance for you to add input to it that is open right now, and that is called the Lexington Preservation and Growth Management Plan.
Program.
You
almost had it. You almost had it.
First of all, welcome. And would you share a little bit about what each of you all love about being on City Council? I think most everybody knows you all, but then also just some of the background of what you all get to do when it comes to real estate development, economic development, and creating the city that people dream of.
Yeah, thanks for having us. What I really love about my job, especially in this moment when there's all this stuff kind of coming down from the federal level and the state level, is that we actually have a lot of impact on what happens locally. And that's one thing I would love for voters and residents to understand more, is as much attention as we pay to national and state level policy, what really is going to affect your lives day to day in your backyard and in your wallet is local policy. In terms of policy around economic development, housing, things like that, I think what local government can do is really create the ecosystem to drive forward the kind of community that we want to be. We have all these documents like our comprehensive plan, like complete streets, like all these different things that have set out essentially our values as a city of what kind of community, what kind of city we want to be. The hard part is always aligning our regulations, aligning our policies with those philosophies. But I think we can go a long way in really helping craft, along with the community, what kind of city we really want to be.
Liz, when you think about the time you spent on council and all of the things that have touched how neighborhoods are shaped and how the city is seen, what are some of those tasks that you all would work through the proper process of committees and workshops to work groups to committees to a council vote that people may not have been aware of that affect real estate development, economic development, community development?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know much about my background, but I actually am on the faculty at UK in the psychology department. So I started running for office and my work on council because I'm so interested in how do we meet the basic needs of those in our community. So for me, teaching psychology, everyone's heard of like the Maslow's hierarchy, right? You have to have your basic needs met before you can get these higher levels of achievement and self-actualization. But housing is certainly in there. For me, though, a part of that is security, and like economic security is in there as well. When it comes to my council work, I'm the chair of our General Government and Planning Committee. So I help set our agendas and that determines how we move some of these bigger policy pieces that Dan mentioned and that you have seen move through council. And for me, some of the bigger ones that we have done recently are certainly the Urban Growth Management ZODA. I think that allowed us a lot of opportunity to really change some of the growth in our city in a way that incentivizes or even encourages, I would say, higher density development along our corridors that kind of goes against some of the things that we might think of with where people don't want to see sprawl, right? You want to see higher density areas, you want to see higher density housing, you also want to see things connected to our transportation network, right? So we have a new corridor node zone where We've really encouraged like multi-use spaces and housing along places where we already have major transportation for people to get around, and bike and walk access as well. So those kinds of policies, I think in the context of this conversation, are ones that like stick out to me.
Good deal. So walk us through what this public input window looks like and what we're actually talking about today with the we won't try to turn it into an acronym for now.
Yeah, LPGMP. It's a little shorter, a little easier to remember. So all along this process, we've had multiple opportunities for people to give input, either in person at some educational events, and also give public comment here in the chambers, and multiple opportunities to give input online through Engage Lexington. So this round is basically kind of an open-ended survey, basically asking folks, what do you think of the program as you see it? Right now we have the second draft of the proposal up along with ordinance language. People can actually go and comment directly on the document itself, so they can highlight or point to a specific piece of it and say, well, here's what I think about this. So this will be open until October 16th. And for us, it's really, really important always to engage with folks on these issues, especially when it gets a little bit wonky and into the weeds. Sometimes things like this aren't as visceral and aren't as attention-grabbing as a lot of other subjects. So we want to give people as much opportunity and as many opportunities as possible to kind of really weigh in. And some of that feedback, along with meetings that we've had with stakeholders on either side of the issue, have really helped inform the changes and the edits that we've made along the way. Every time I present this, and that we've talked to people in this past year, we've said this is a work in progress. If you look at it and your main criticism is that it's not perfect, great, because it's not supposed to be perfect. And to be honest, the final product will not be perfect, right? That's one thing we really have to realize as decision makers, is that whatever we put out into the world, it simply is not going to be perfect. It's simply not going to make everybody happy. It's not how it works. So we're trying to get to as perfect of a product as possible, but that takes that feedback and input from folks.
And part of this is born out of my ignorance, but can you speak a little bit to the process or maybe what kind of started this idea of how did you all start on this journey?
Yeah, we certainly did not start this journey. This has been a long time coming kind of project, and it's happened in different forms, most recently with the Goal 4 work group a few years ago, and then a few years before that with the Sustainable Growth Task Force. So people on council and people in government and in planning have realized that we've needed a process to guide how we grow and how we preserve Lexington. For various reasons, they've gotten to certain sort of levels of progress, but never really across the finish line. And so we're building on the work that's already been done to kind of really push it past the finish line.
And I would say some of the need for this is so that we're all using common language and looking at a common data set. So the big part of this is that this is a data-driven process. So we have a report that comes out that would be a trends analysis for our housing and economic development. And then with regard to the program and the process that we use to then evaluate that data for our future needs, we'll all be looking at a common set of terminology, but also that common data. Because I think when people come to this conversation, and certainly in the past, I think we all know you can cherry pick a data point, right? And so you can use that to prove your point and push whatever agenda or side of things that you want to kind of approach something from. But this allows us to all be working from the same set of data and terminology. And I think that consistency, not only within one conversation, but across years, is very important.
SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate is a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky. Affiliated with the SVN International Network, SVN has over 200 offices across the globe. The SV & Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN helps their clients with commercial property sales, leasing, investments, and property management. Let SVN help you with your commercial real estate needs. Check us out at svnstone.com.
And so, catch us up on the document that everybody has the chance right now to go and give feedback to. What have you all, how have you seen it evolve? What are you, if you had to catch everybody up to what they're looking at today, where is it?
Sure. So very briefly, kind of what the process even is. Basically, and a lot of it came out of some of the friction and some of the issues that came out of the last comp plan and back in 2023. As we all know, and that happens every 5 years and probably more frequently, the question of expanding the urban service area kind of sucks the oxygen out of the room in a lot of conversations, and it happened again in 2023. And a lot of the attention focused on that look at the comp plan was on the expansion that council did vote for. So what this process wants to do is separate the needs analysis away from that comp plan 5-year cycle, which we are required by state statute to do. So that's going to kind of separate those so that each thing can have the attention focused on it. And then basically, based on that study to see, do we have enough land for housing for the next 20 years, based on that answer, kind of determines which route we go. One of the biggest changes that came out of this most recent draft is that no matter what the result of that study is, whether they say we have enough land for 20 years of housing or we don't, the first bite at the apple is going to be looking at regulatory and policy proposed changes. And to me, a lot of that is about infill. A lot of the comments that we've gotten from stakeholders and from the public is that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of folks are saying, before you look at expansion, let's look at the land that we have available, let's look at underused land, let's use the unused land, and let's do better with infill. And we said, great. I am a huge proponent of infill redevelopment. So the focus has kind of shifted to, no matter what the outcome of the study is, we look at regulatory and policy changes first. And then we look at potential expansion. So that was a really big change that came out of a lot of the feedback that we got.
Yeah, from this year. So we started in a place where we wanted to be very clear and transparent with the public about how this was being developed and where the opportunities were for public input. So in January, we started with a timeline and kind of an overview of where we wanted to get. And then about mid-year in May, we released a flow chart, right, that kind of gave an overview of what the process looks like. And then more recently in September, we released the actual codified language or draft language of what that diagram looks like when it's written into ordinance. And that's the place we are now, is getting feedback on now the actual written draft that has all of the level of detail that you might want in it, that really guides the specific parts of the policy.
Terrific. And those of you all listening on any of the platforms, it's going to be linked in the show notes, as well as the bio on the social media channels. So some of those policies that talking about that act as the building blocks that need to be hammered out before we think about eating the big elephant of anything that's in the future. What are some of those that come to mind that constituents reach out to you all trying to find a way to solve problems for?
I mean, we're always kind of talking over affordable housing. You know, we've also had a recent state level study and a local study about our housing needs. But we get into these conversations about where does housing go, right? And how do you increase housing in an area while preserving the characteristics of the neighborhood? How do you not gentrify an area? Those are the conversations that we have regularly with our constituents. And we do that by guiding policy.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was going to say, I love conversations like this. I don't have familiarity outside of going to your front porch to pick up a T-shirt one time with either of you, candidly, and your personal lives. And I am curious, obviously you guys have become kind of advocates for continuing to push Lexington forward through government. What was, just to maybe humanize you all a little bit, because I think we all need that in government roles, what were kind of some of the issues that were things that you were interested in, and why you are sitting in the seat you are today? Like, what got you into the role that you are today?
For me, in a general way, I've just always, looked at everything I've done in the last years, and the through line was, how do I make this a better community? How do I make Lexington a better place, not just for me, but for everyone else? And so in looking at that, you look at sort of what are the common or most common challenges that people have, right? And housing just always rises to the top of it. Housing's my number one issue to think about, because it forms the basis for the stability that we talked about, for people to be able to live their lives. If you don't have stable housing, that impacts everything else, even if you have a job, even if your kids are in school, and it makes it really difficult. And right now, the housing crisis that we're facing is not just Lexington, certainly. We are better off than a lot of places, but it's still a very acute problem, and it's a national problem that goes all the way back to World War II and beyond in terms of how we got here. So a lot of the things that got us to this place, there's some market forces, but there's also policy that's kind of informed how we built for the last decades. Some of it has to do with zoning, some of it has to do with approval processes and development plans and all the wonky, nerdy stuff that kind of starts to lose people. But the core of it, going back to my idea about, we've expressed the values about what kind of community we want to be. So now how do we bring that in line and actually produce the kind of housing that people need? I mean, you all know this, that housing is difficult in general to build and develop. Affordable housing is impossible to do without subsidies and benefits and, certain moves to kind of make it be able to happen. Every time I talk to, especially a small developer or a first-time developer who's doing affordable housing, it amazes me the amount of creativity that it requires, especially to build that financing deck of like, well, we got a little bit of money from this, and we have this tax credit, and we've got this federal funding, and we're doing this, so we're qualifying for this. It's so difficult right now. And so for us, as policymakers here, we're always looking at, how do we make that better or easier? How do we just create more housing stock for our city? We can't solve a lot of our problems without really solving the housing issue.
Liz, same question.
For me, I mentioned before that I have an interest in, from my psych background in how do we meet people's basic needs. But that also came from my work in nonprofits and the community here before I got started in politics and government. And one of those is working with our community experiencing homelessness. So I had been a long-time volunteer before I even moved here. But when I got here, I immediately got involved in volunteering with that community and was just seeing the gaps in our community in meeting their needs. And now I serve on our Homelessness Prevention and Intervention Board. So I've been able to increase resources to provide services and housing opportunity for folks through this job. But outside of housing, I also teach a careers in psychology class. I have a senior in high school who was in elementary school when I started this, and I was a Girl Scout troop leader. So I was working with youth, not only at the undergraduate level, but in my own personal life. And I want everyone to see opportunity here. If you are a young professional, I want you to see a job for you here. I want you to see that you can buy a starter home here. I want you to see a place where you can be an adult and raise a family and stay long term, or leave for college and come back and want to be here for your adult life, right? So For me, it has not only that like professional or like social services side and meeting people's needs, but also that kind of like thinking just about my own personal life. And I want my now senior in high school to want to come back here later.
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmanContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful. I ask because you all volunteer your time in a lot of different capacities through this role on things that maybe are not part of the job description, and a lot of that has to do with the passions. And maybe housing and maybe the urban service area were a passion ahead of time, but you really are given the ball and say, go figure it out through this role. So I do appreciate that you guys maybe or maybe not had that passion ahead of time, but it is the task that Lexington is given at this point, so you are leading the charge on.
Well, and I think what you'll find with Dan and I is, every council member approaches their job a little bit differently, and we have a lot of freedom to do that and to set the rules for how we want to execute them. But we're ones that are not afraid to jump into the bigger policy pieces. And not everybody has the time or capacity to do that or the want to do that. But we're like, nope, these are the big needs we have. We have to figure it out.
Yeah, and I always say this job is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure job. Sometimes I'll speak to kids or school groups, and they'll ask, like, what does your day look like? Like, what do you have to do with your job? It's like, well, we have to attend X number of meetings, in this room. Outside of that, it's kind of entirely up to us. For me, looking at it from an at-large council member point of view, I have a 4-year term, longer than my district colleagues with the 2-year terms. So I do find it to be sort of my wheelhouse about looking at the larger picture of what's happening in the city. And it's been really great working with Liz because I think we both have that kind of big picture view. And thinking about things, thinking about potentially realizing changes and improvements in the city that we won't be around to necessarily experience, right? You see all the time with ex-council members or ex-mayors coming back to do ribbon cuttings because it's something that they sort of spearheaded or launched, 8 or 10 or 15 years ago, and then just now it's coming to fruition. So things like development and housing especially take a long time to do. Even if we somehow perfected everything on the regulatory level today, right, we wouldn't see those sort of housing and development and economic development changes until years and years down the road.
So Wu Wei is probably not going to be built in the next 4 years, or Sheehan Street.
No, I don't think you get a street named after you till you die anyway.
So you mentioned some of the nerdy things that are probably not nerdy to most of our listeners, where you're in fire review and you find out that a radius isn't right, and you're like, goodness gracious. What are some of those things that you see as the common culprit that creates a graveyard of past developments? That for somebody that may have only started in real estate and is only owning a couple properties at this point, but has dreams of a big development, what are some of those tips, tricks, probably not tricks, tips and ways that you can navigate the municipal processes well?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot recently and reading a lot of books about the abundance movement that's kind of burgeoning right now. And a lot of it really talks about the bottlenecks and the bureaucracies and sort of the obstacles that we're putting up. And I don't think most of the obstacles that we put up towards development is either intentional or malicious. But what happens is, and this goes to another saying that I really like, is don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, right? We put in all these parameters Because again, it's informing what kind of community we want to be. We want to be a community with lots of tree canopy. We want to be a community that's sustainable. We want to be a community that has accessible sidewalks. We want to think about aesthetics. We want to think about parking, all those sort of things. So if all those things did line up, you could have, quote unquote, the perfect development. But we all know perfect development doesn't happen, right? It doesn't exist. And so from the developer side, you're looking at, well, I can't do this thing this wide, so I have to apply for this variance or try to get this waiver. And every one of those steps, adds time and adds cost. So it's always a push and pull, I think. I don't think we as policymakers can ever create a set of policies and regulations that is perfect for development, that is also perfect for the rest of the community, that is also perfect for these larger picture things that we're trying to craft. So that's always kind of a negotiation. Where I really want to look at it is, are our policies so much of a hindrance that things just aren't getting built, or things go from feasible to unfeasible, right? And then, to me, it would defeat the purpose of having those kind of regulatory frameworks in there, is that we're saying we're shooting for perfect, but nobody can get to perfect, so just nothing gets built. Like, that doesn't make any sense either. So it's a balancing act, and there's no perfect answer, and I think we're going to continually make imperfect improvements and maybe mistakes, and maybe have to go back and forth, but I think it's a conversation that we need to continually have.
I think one piece in here that kind of speaks to some of this, like, why hasn't something been developed yet? And maybe you view it from the development perspective, but we also have those conversations all the time where the community looks at a lot and is like, well, I thought something was going to happen there, and then it didn't. And the processes take a long time. Government is not the fastest moving ship, right? So it takes a long time for something to move through a system. And sometimes developers do hit barriers. And I don't think the community always understands that. But I think it's our job as a government to then try to figure out what are the barriers to getting to what the best fit for the community is, and seeing if we can reduce those in different ways. But I think there's a lot of finger pointing of well, this is happening over here, but it's not happening over here, and we have to kind of have those very open conversations. But my tip would be, talk to us, please, right? So talk to our planning staff. They are very professional, and they're creative, and they want to work with the community. So they know the policies that we have in place backwards and forwards, so please have meetings with them. But if you have identified something that is a barrier for you in our system, talk to us as well, because we're the policymakers, right? So the planning staff have to execute the policy that's set, but we are the policymakers, and we can have a conversation with you about different zoning ordinance text amendments, or where something might be stuck in an approval process, and see if there's a change that can be made there, or at least discussed. But if you don't come to us, we don't know.
And I'll add too, one of the points of friction that we see very often is between developers and existing communities or neighbors and neighborhoods. And what I've seen is that the best outcomes are usually from developers who are willing and able to put in the work and the time to engage those communities on the front end, not wait until the opposition and the pushback comes, and then everybody's kind of on the defensive and things get personal and mean sometimes. But the ones that really engage with the community and say, hey, here's what we're thinking. What are your thoughts about it? What are your objections to it? What would get you to yes, right? And those developments that have had those conversations have come out to be successful, so that by the time you get to the development plan or the zone change hearing, there isn't a room full of people saying no, because you've engaged with them in good faith. And I think that makes all the difference in the world, because it is very hard for us as decision makers to face a room full of people, whether or not they're representative of the entire neighborhood or in the entire district or anything. That's what we hear. If 40 people sign up for public comment and 39 of them are saying no to this development, right? That makes an impression on us as decision makers who are representing the people, including the people in that room. So I think the more front end proactive engagement that developers do with community members, both sides have to act in good faith and try to get to the best imperfect product. I think that's really key.
But I just want to add quickly, we also want to hear from the people who want to say yes. We oftentimes hear from the people who say no. You know, when you're mad about something or upset about something, you're going to be more likely to reach out and engage and try to get something changed or stopped. But we also need to hear from the people in our community who want to see change and who want to support some of the things that are coming before us. So we need to hear from the yes people just as much as the no people.
The right partner can make or break your development project. That's why Bowman's integrated services, from landscape architecture to planning and engineering, are trusted by the region's top developers. With deep roots in Lexington and the backing of a national network, Bowman has helped shape some of Central Kentucky's most iconic projects. They know the land, the process, and what it takes to get things built. Ready to move forward with confidence? Call William Hodges, Regional Leader, at 859-309-6501.
So, YIMBYs and NIMBYs.
Yes.
What are the ways that people can feel heard and they can effectively reach you all in all the different engagement portals or methods?
Certainly coming to a council meeting. So we have our work sessions and our council meetings have public comment time. If you are for an issue that is not on the agenda that day, that might be coming up later or something, you speak at the end of the meeting. If it is an issue like a zone change or a policy piece that's on the agenda for that day, you speak at the start. So you can look at our agendas online, or you can come here and we have someone standing outside of the chambers who can help you navigate signing in and getting in here and to speak. Emails and phone calls are also wonderful. We get lots and lots of those. But then we have this Engage Lexington platform. So it's engage.lexingtonky.gov. And when we have bigger policy things that we're working on, like the Preservation and Growth Management Program, we have one up for the solar ZOTA, we have one up for a digital access program or accessibility program that's going on right now, Complete Streets and our Street Safety Task Force. All of those larger policy pieces, we are putting up more consistent projects there to elicit feedback as well. But you can always go there and see, what are some of the bigger policy things that are going on at council right now and give feedback. And there's lots of different ways to give feedback there as well.
Yeah, and I'll add certainly my district council members do it more often than I do, but going to neighborhood meetings, going to district meetings, there you really get, I think, a little more time and a little more face-to-face engagement with us about issues. So we obviously always want to hear from people in terms of, and again, people are more activated when they're like mad about something. But we do want to hear from people who maybe like something that we're doing or want to push for sort of a positive thing, like, hey, what would be great is this, as opposed to, oh, I hate the way that you're doing this. I think both are valuable, but for us to, like, something that we value a lot is the idea of cultivating community champions. And all that means is people in the community that often already have an informal leadership role or are influential among their folks, their people, who want to learn more about what it is we're doing and how it is to push for those changes, and very often to be in their own communities and dispelling misinformation and disinformation, because we're not always the best, and we're always trying to improve in terms of how government communicates to folks. But anytime there's a lack of information, that vacuum gets filled very quickly in this day and age.
Reddit threads get full.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like you talk about Reddit, like sometimes Reddit is just like god awful and like tough to navigate. But sometimes you see people going there and saying, no, actually, what you're saying is wrong, and here are my receipts. Here's why this is actually happening. And so it's really encouraging to see people kind of step up. And those, to me, are those community champions that are sort of like pushing for putting out accurate information and making convincing arguments.
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex and Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
Remind me the acronym that we're using today one more time.
LPGMP.
LPGMP.
Yep, Lexington's Preservation and Growth Management Program.
As we kind of have some final thoughts and part from this interview, can you all plug one more time how listeners can interact with the project that you are working on? And then I would also ask a parting thought. We typically ask for like action items for listeners. You guys hit that very well. But what is one thing that you are excited as a citizen of Lexington that's happening in Lexington right now? First the project.
Sure. First, so you can go to engage.lexingtonky.gov. That has all of our current big projects on it, and LPGMP is certainly one of them. That survey is up until October 16th. What I'm excited about in Lexington, honestly, is the continued growth and development and maintenance of our park system. We have over, I think, 100 parks in Lexington. My family and I tried in COVID year 2020. We I think a lot of people had these like weird lofty goals of like, I'm gonna, bake this much sourdough. And for us, it was like, we're gonna hit every park in Lexington. And that kind of petered out real fast. We did hit, I think, about 30 or 40, and just suddenly realizing like, wow, there
like
are a lot of parks.
100 something, right?
Yeah, it's over 100 parks, and not all of them are, like Shiloh and Jacobson sides. They're tiny little pockets. As a pickleball player, I'm also really excited that we are putting up pickleball court after pickleball court in a lot of our new parks. Shiloh, we've got 20 courts there, 4 new courts at Picadome, and then Cardinal Run North is going to have some as well. So just really putting a lot of money and resource and intentional improvement into our park system, I think is tremendous, because parks are such a civic common good that makes quality of life so great here.
Liz, what excites you about the future?
For me, one of the big pieces that we're working on, and Dan is a part of our street safety task force with me, but it's the complete streets policy that we're working on, and seeing.
Can you share a little bit about that? Because
yeah,
I don't. Okay.
I was going to give it that.
Got too excited.
But yeah, so complete streets policy is that in our transportation network, no matter your age, no matter your mobility, no matter your mode of transportation, you should be able to get around our county safely and efficiently. So you could be a biker, you could be a walker, you could be on the bus, you can be in a car, you can be in a wheelchair or a stroller, and you should be able to get around. And we've seen a lot of movement, not only on policy, but also in infrastructure that supports that. Like if you look at our Town Branch Trail, we have projects in my district coming on Liberty Road and Alumni that have shared use path components. But the increases in not only safety, but then also just the ability to get around our city are exciting to me, because I love that. Like, we chose our home when we moved here to be able to walk to UK, and for our child to like be able to walk to school or bike. And so we want that for everyone, right? Our family does. So I'm excited to see changes coming that are really supporting that.
Terrific. Well, thank you all for your service to Lexington. Thank you for making Lexington a stronger, more advancing city. And thanks for sharing about the LPMG.
LPGMP.
LPMG.
Go home and just keep repeating it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.